Did you know the average person lies at least once a day? Bet you didn't see that coming. Your coworker fudges the truth about a project. Your best friend hides where they really went last night. Even your boss might be spinning some story about the real reason you got passed over for that promotion. Here's the thing. We're living in a world where a lie can come wrapped in a bright smile, a rock-steady voice, and a face so innocent it's almost flawless. If you don't know how to see through it, you're always the one who ends up getting burned. But here's the catch. Almost everything we've ever heard about spotting a lie is dead wrong. You'd think liars avoid eye contact or fidget nervously, right? Forget that myth. In reality, the best liars out there can stare you dead in the eye without blinking, talk smooth as silk, and even flip the script on you until you're the one thinking, wait, am I just overthinking this? Sounds pretty hopeless, right? Don't worry, because I'm Dex. Today, I'm going to let you in on the hidden psychological tricks FBI agents have used for years to catch liars in the act. I guarantee by the end of this video, you'll know exactly when someone's playing you before they even finish their sentence. Trick 1, the magic question trick. Usually, when we suspect someone, our instinct is to ask closed yes or no questions. Like, if you suspect your best friend skipped out on last night's party, you'd ask, did you go to the party last night? But here's the thing. That question lets them off way too easy. Why? Because it hands them a huge escape hatch. All they have to do is say one word, yes, and boom, the burden of proof lands right back on you. You're basically handing them a ready-made script, and all they have to do is nod along. Instead, professional interrogators use a much sharper psychological move, the open-ended, presumptive question. Don't ask to confirm what happened. Ask like you already know the whole story. Instead of, did you go last night? Try switching it to, so what happened yesterday that made you leave the party early? See the difference? Our brains are wired to process information based on context. When you throw out a presumptive question, you block off that easy yes or no exit. If they're telling the truth, they'll immediately push back on the core assumption. What are you talking about? I stayed until the party ended. But if they're hiding something, their brain freezes for a second. They can't just say yes or no anymore. They're forced to scramble and invent a brand new excuse for a situation they never prepped a story for. Having to force your brain to cook up a story in just a few seconds is bound to create logical cracks, and that's when the mask starts to slip. But listen, asking the right question is only half the weapon. To read someone's true reaction accurately, you need to know how to cast an invisible net before the conversation even really starts. Trick 2, the baseline and 5-second rule. Let's be real, you can't tell if someone's acting off if you don't know what their normal looks like. This is a core principle in behavioral analysis. Before touching on any sensitive topic, FBI agents always take time for small talk questions that don't matter at all. Was traffic bad today? How's the coffee here? The point isn't to chat for fun, the point is to gather data. You need to scan their baseline. Pay close attention to these 3 things for me. 1. Speech pace. Do they talk fast or slow, loud or quiet? 2. Body language. Do they lean back or lean forward? Where do they keep their hands? Do they blink a lot? 3. Word choice. Do they use short or long sentences? Do they toss in a lot of slang? Once you've locked in this baseline, you now have a reference point. Now you can steer the conversation to the main topic and trigger the 5-second rule. The moment you drop that killer question like the one from Trick 1, stay quiet and focus on watching them for exactly the first 5 seconds. Why 5 seconds? According to neuroscience, the brain needs a certain amount of time to process the question, sense danger, filter the truth, and finally cook up a lie. Trust me, that process burns way more energy, like 100 times more, than just telling the truth. In that golden 5-second window, their conscious mind is busy building a fake story, which makes them lose control over their physical body. You'll start noticing shifts away from their baseline. Someone who normally makes eye contact suddenly looks down at the table. Someone who normally talks fast suddenly stumbles, clears their throat, or unconsciously rubs the back of their neck or touches their nose. But behavioral science always stresses this. One random sign proves nothing. An itchy nose could just be the weather. But if within those 5 seconds you catch a cluster, meaning 2 to 3 unusual behaviors hitting at the same time, plus a clear break from their baseline, the odds are extremely high that you're sitting across from a liar. And you know what the fatal weakness of lying is? It demands a superhuman memory. And that's exactly the foundation for the third trick. Trick 3, the double check and time trap. Truth is, by nature, an episodic memory. When someone tells you a story that actually happened, they've got a bunch of anchor points in their head: the setting, the feelings, the sequence of events, the people involved, and all the little surrounding details. Now, memory's not perfect, of course. Even someone telling the truth will forget small details sometimes. But here's the key part. They're totally fine shrugging and saying, "I don't really remember," instead of forcing out a smooth, perfect answer from start to finish. A lie, on the other hand, it's manufactured, pieced together from imagination and logical thinking. A liar isn't remembering an event, they're trying to recite a script of that event. And a script always ends up with some cracks in the timeline. This is where you set the double check trap. This technique means splitting your curiosity into multiple rounds. Say a coworker skips a meeting and excuses it by saying, "I was out meeting a client yesterday and got stuck in brutal traffic all afternoon." Step 1. Just casually toss out a quick question. Where exactly were you stuck that it took so long? They might confidently answer right away. Stuck at the intersection on X Street around 3 p.m. Great. Stop right there. Change the subject. Let their brain relax and feel satisfied that they got through it. 15 minutes later, in the middle of a completely unrelated conversation, suddenly steer back to that same topic from a slightly different angle. "Oh, hey, by the way, it was so sunny yesterday. Being stuck in traffic at 3 p.m. at that intersection must have been brutal, huh?" At this point, someone telling the truth will respond based on natural memory. "Sunny? No way. It was pouring rain at 3 p.m. yesterday over there. I got soaked like a drowned rat." But a liar, whose brain is so busy clinging to the traffic jam script that they forget to cross-check background details like the weather, will rush to go along with it. "Yeah, blazing hot, it was exhausting." Boom, consistency just shattered. Even if they have a superhuman memory sharp enough to keep the details straight, their word choice will still give them away. But the next trick is even more powerful. Trick 4, the wishy-washy word trick. In psycholinguistics, there's a really interesting phenomenon called detachment from cognitive responsibility. When someone is about to say something they know deep down is a lie, there's always a flicker of fear buried in their subconscious about getting caught. So instead of committing to firm, definite statements, their brain unconsciously reaches for defensive words, words that leave a safe escape hatch open. We call these hedging words. Instead of saying, "I was home all day yesterday," they'll hedge it. "I think I was probably just home yesterday," or "I guess I was home, I don't really remember clearly." Words like maybe, I guess, I think, possibly, they work exactly like a shock absorber. If you later pull out solid proof that they weren't home, they can casually dodge responsibility. "Well, I already said I wasn't sure. No need to make a big deal out of it." Stay extra alert during the make or break moments of the story. If right at the critical point, exactly where they should be stating something firmly, they suddenly switch to vague, wishy-washy language, that's a bright red alarm going off. Someone telling the truth always lays out the facts directly and confidently. A liar, on the other hand, uses hedging words to leave themselves an out. Of course, sometimes hesitation is just from bad memory or stress, so you've got to judge it fairly. But if that vagueness suddenly shows up right after you dig deeper into the topic, that's not a coincidence. That could very well be the moment they're scrambling to cover up a lie. Trick 5, the topic switch alert. When your question hits a nerve, the other person immediately feels psychologically threatened. To them, this isn't a normal conversation anymore. It's a disaster zone where they could get exposed, judged, or completely lose control. And when the pressure spikes, their first survival instinct usually isn't to answer directly, it's to bail on the topic. They're not running with their feet, they're escaping by hijacking the steering wheel of the conversation. There are 3 classic escape moves like this. 1, they cling onto some tiny, irrelevant detail you happen to mention to steer things somewhere else. 2, they crack a lame joke to lighten up the tense mood. 3, and this is the sneakiest one, they flip it into a counterattack and play the victim. "Why do you keep bringing that up over and over? Don't you trust me? Do you have any idea how exhausted I am right now?" Their unconscious goal? Make you feel guilty, uneasy, awkward, or distracted, so you automatically drop the questioning. Here's how FBI agents handle this beautifully, elegant but completely in control. The golden rule is, never get worked up, and absolutely don't let them drag you down into an emotional argument. If you rush to explain yourself, like, "No, it's not that I don't trust you," you've already fallen into the trap. All you need to do is stay completely neutral, ice cold, and gently pull them back to the starting line. Just say something like, "We can definitely talk about you feeling untrusted later. I really get that. But hold on, back to that detail from earlier. By acknowledging their feelings while still holding your ground without ever coming off aggressive, you strip away their diversion weapon completely. If they're genuinely guilty, their awkwardness, restlessness, and defensiveness will show up way more clearly. But if you're the type who wants to take charge and tear down their defense system right away, here's the next move. It's a bit heavier, but there's no question it works. Trick 6, the interruption hack. To understand why this move is such a killer, you need to dig a little deeper into the concept of cognitive load in psychology. Lying is an incredibly heavy mental workout. Picture your brain like a computer's RAM. When you tell the truth, you barely use any capacity. You're just opening up an existing memory file. But when you lie, your brain has to blast open a bunch of heavy apps all at once, suppressing the truth, rendering a fake script, keeping your voice calm, controlling every blink, and constantly scanning your face to see if you're buying it. Bottom line, a liar's brain is juggling way too much at the same time. The interruption technique is when you suddenly toss out an unexpected question, forcing them to fly off the track of the story they had prepared. Right when they're deep into performing their fake story, right when they're pouring 200% of their energy into keeping the script smooth and logical, cut them off with a completely out-of-nowhere question. A small tip here is to ask about space, time, or feelings. Why? Because a liar usually only bothers choreographing the sequence of actions and rarely bothers building out a detailed setting in their head. Say they're rambling on, "So yesterday afternoon I drove to that coffee shop and right when I walked in," you immediately cut in. "Wait, hold on, when you were driving there, was it raining?" Or, "Hang on, before you got in the car, what color shirt were you wearing?" This sudden twist slams straight into their prepared rhythm. It forces their brain to slam the brakes on the reading the script process, scramble to handle this brand new piece of data you just threw at them, then frantically figure out how to stitch it back into the old storyline without exposing a gap. Someone telling the truth might smack their forehead trying to remember, or just flat out say, "I don't know, I didn't notice." But someone making up a story will flinch and rush to force out an answer that sounds plausible right away. You'll notice them freeze for a good while, eyes darting around like popcorn popping, stammering, even repeating your question back to buy time. Even worse, when they try to crawl back to the original story, their storyline starts falling apart, and the following details get jumbled and clash hard with what they just claimed a minute earlier. At this point, their brain has been pushed to the red zone, exhausted and extremely prone to mistakes. And boom, this is the golden moment to land your finishing blow. Trick 7, the fake detail trap. Fair warning, this technique is extremely powerful, but needs to be used very carefully. This is when you use the liar's own anxiety against them, turning them into someone who confesses without even realizing it. The rule of the game is simple. Deliberately drop a fake detail into the story, then sit back and watch how they react. Say a coworker excuses being late by claiming there was terrible traffic at intersection X. You know for a fact that intersection was totally clear this morning. Instead of calling them out directly, set the trap by playing the role of someone who's extremely understanding. "Oh, I know, right? This morning over at intersection X, there was that broken down truck blocking half the road, wasn't there? Man, that must have sucked for you." When in reality, there was no truck at all. The magic of behavioral psychology kicks in right at this exact moment. If someone is telling the truth and actually had to crawl through that intersection inch by inch, they'll hold on to the objective reality they just lived through. They'll immediately correct you without hesitation. "Wait, what are you talking about? There was no truck. It was just packed with cars. That's why it was jammed up." But what about a liar? They were never even there. How would they know? Your seemingly sympathetic lead-in, combined with their gut-wrenching fear of getting caught, will send them free-falling straight into what's called compliance under pressure. They'll grab onto your invisible truck like it's a life raft, as long as it makes their story look more confirmed. They'll enthusiastically go along with it. Exactly, there really was a broken-down truck so annoying it jammed up the whole street. And boom, game over. They just loudly confirmed an event that never existed anywhere on this earth. By struggling to defend a fake script, They ended up digging their own grave through their own defensive instincts. Okay, so detecting lies isn't some secret magic trick passed down through generations. It's purely a combination of behavioral science, a sharp eye for observation, and your own patience. By changing how you ask questions, scanning for a baseline, cross-checking timelines, watching closely for hedging words, shutting down diversion tactics, creating cognitive load through interruptions, and finally using the fake detail trap, you've now officially armed yourself with a serious toolkit to observe better, ask smarter questions, and break down a story with a clear head. But hey, keep this golden rule locked in your mind. Behavioral analysis techniques are indicators, not verdicts. We humans are incredibly complex, and sometimes plain old stress can get mistaken for deception. Use this knowledge fairly. Cross-check it against real evidence, the specific context, and even your own gut feeling as an early warning sign. Trust me, sometimes your gut feeling is simply your brain ringing an alarm bell about small inconsistencies you haven't quite put into words yet. If you found this behavioral psychology knowledge fascinating and it's helping you see the world around you more clearly, why not smash that like button and hit subscribe, right? I'm Dex, thanks for watching. We'll keep uncovering more wild mysteries of the human mind in upcoming videos. See you next time.